Hi there. Today I'm making a loaf of bread, brown bread, with the Panasonic SD2501 Breadmaker. It comes with quite a comprehensive manual, and it's worth giving this a read at the front to go through what ingredients to use and why they're used and how to do settings and so on and so forth. So that's very handy. I have found over time though that although some of the recipes are very interesting, the cooking process or baking process seems to lose the flavour of what's been added, like cheese or bacon and stuff like that. So the one that's become my standard is the wholemeal loaf, which is basically using a high grade flour, white flour that is, half of that, and then half wholemeal flour. That seems to work out quite well. There's three settings on it: medium, large or extra large. Again, I used to do extra large, but the loaf tends to be rather tall in stature and difficult to cut. So I now do medium size, which works quite well. Anyway, what comes with it is the dispenser. I use that because, well, if the book says you know, take teaspoonful, then that's a teaspoon, tablespoon, that's a tablespoon size they mean. Two hooks or mixers, that's the normal one, it's used most of the time, and that's the one used for rye bread. I have made the rye bread, and if you try using that, it doesn't mix very well. If you try using that with the ordinary flour, it also doesn't mix very well, so whoever's worked out the designs, they've got it pretty much spot on. So use that one. The bowl, mixing bowl, inside the machine, it's like that. Now, I've used this for about 18 months, 2 years. This is my second Panasonic machine, and I've never actually had to clean out the inside of it. The bread has always come out clean, maybe a quick wipe with a damp cloth. It says in the book, don't get the underside wet or damp. My previous one I used to soak it in water, but probably wasn't the right thing to do, so that just stays out of the water. And the mixing hook just slips over the ring at the bottom, which you may not be able to see, it's all dark down there. And the only thing I've found is that the mixing hook can ride up on occasions, but when the bread is tipped out, the hook usually stays in the bowl, which is quite good. Anyway, so that's the bowl to mix the food in. The way the Panasonic works is dry ingredients then wet ingredients, not vice versa like it is with some mixers. And don't jumble them up. The idea is to keep the yeast dry while it's just settling, whatever the phrase is. So the cooking time for the recipe I'm on is in fact 5 hours. So it just sits there for an hour, and then it starts doing its thing. The previous one, it had a quick, sort of rapid bake, which was sort of about 3 hours. And yeah, the loaf didn't come out as big as with this normal cooking. It was also interesting to note that this is in New Zealand, and in fact I've got two recipes in this, the new recipe book that's come out with this machine, Australia and New Zealand, which just shows that the New Zealand flour is quite weak in gluten. It doesn't have much gluten in it, so you need to put in more yeast. So I don't know if you can see that there, but in this recipe, for the same size loaf, I have to use 3 teaspoons of yeast, whereas the Australian recipe is only 1 1/4 teaspoons. So it needs an extra boost. It's also recommended in New Zealand to use the Edmonds, say, shore bake, because that's got added vitamin C or ascorbic acid, which helps with the rising process, which again is needed there because of the wheat gluten in New Zealand flour. Okay, so First off with the dry ingredients, so I just follow through the recipe in order. So start off with the 3 teaspoons of yeast, and I've got don't forget to put the hook in first, because it gets quite messy if you forget to put it in. Try and put it in afterwards. Pop in the 3 teaspoons of yeast, 2, 3, and that's should do that. The yeast, once it's opened, I keep that in the fridge. It's then onto the flour. The easiest thing I've found with flour weighing is to buy one of these tier scales, T-A-R-E, and basically you put what you want to weigh in on it, press the on button, and it's set to 0. So I don't need to move things in and out of mixing bowl, weighing bowls and stuff. So I can just put in got 175 of high grade flour, or the cream flour, and then 175 of wholemeal. 175 plus 175 to my maths is 350. So 175, which is about there. 174, and then the wholemeal flour, and again it's 175 and it takes up to 350. So I'll put in the 200, and I'm up to 340, 350. Swap on. There we go. So that's the weighing finished. So I just take that off, cancel out the scales, and switch the scales off. I've just shaken that because I had a pyramid in there, so I've just flattened it down a bit. And then I carry on with adding the dry ingredients. Next one is the salt. And again, it's just a teaspoon of salt according to the recipe. And it explains in the book why salt's needed, if you're wondering about, oh, shouldn't be eating salt. And the next thing is milk powder here. And again, this is I keep this in the fridge too. So this is, well, I don't know, bought about 3 or 4 months ago, and works okay. And again, as it says in the book, it's just a convenient thing to use dry milk powder rather than having to use wet milk. And if you use the wet milk, it suggests you need to adjust the dry ingredients in the recipe, otherwise it won't rise. It is important to follow the recipe fairly exactly with dry to wet ingredients, otherwise you get a complete mess. When I first bought one of these 8 or 9 years ago, I didn't bother weighing particularly accurately, and the bread I was making was total rubbish, and solved it easily once I decided to commit to buying a pair of scales. Sounds sensible now, but anyway. So that's the milk added. The next thing is added butter. Now I don't normally use butter, so I don't want to have that hanging around in the fridge. It will start going rancid. So I just use some oil. In fact, in this case I'm using just olive oil, just to put into the mix. So it's with this one it's 1 tablespoon. So just measure that out, and in it goes. So that's that done. So just one of those. Now, why I'm using this recipe is because it does give it a distinct, very homemade flavour, a really nice bread. And I think that's due to adding the next step, which is the treacle. This is just ordinary treacle, so a tablespoon of that. Very sticky, so to get around the stickiness, what I do is I get my spoon, I'm going to dish it out with a tablespoon, and I'll just heat up the tablespoon in warm water first, and then it will sort of slide off the spoon more easily. easily. Right, so just a tablespoon of treacle, and just put that in there. And that's that done. So all that needs to be done now is to add the water. I'll just check through. I'll put in the yeast, the wholemeal, the white, the salt, the milk, the butter or oil in my case, the treacle and the water. It says 270 ml of water. And again you get a measuring cup comes with it, which is quite handy. So I'll just put in 270 ml of water. Again, it's a bit difficult to see against the light, so 270. There we go, that's it. Put that in there. Oh, just one other point while you're doing this. I take this out and I keep that closed, because I have in the past gone to tip it straight in, forgetting that I've actually got the bowl out. So just a safety feature, if you like, is whilst you're mixing here, don't leave that open, because your tendency is, oh, pour it straight in. No. So just put it in here. So that's that done. And I just put this in here. There we go. And it will just sit nicely down. Doesn't need any pressure, and just need to give it a bit of just a slight twist, and then that's locked it in, ready to do its thing. Now I've plugged it in. The menu is on here, so it says menu 04. So menu buttons on this side. 1, 2, 3, 4. And just to double check on that, it says the number of hours, it says 5 hours, and it's come up 5 hours. The size, and I've gone for the M for medium, so I need to go for the M on here. I can change whether I want dark, medium or light crust, but I don't bother with that. So that's basically just that one, and it's set up. I just need to hit the start button, and away she goes. So in 5 hours time I'll have a loaf of bread. If you want to use the timer, the way the timer works, I've used it a couple of times, is it basically just adds time. So it's, at the moment, without any delay, it's going to take 5 hours to complete, so it's come up with a 5 on the display. If I hit the timer, it will add an hour, and add another hour, and another hour. So if I want it to finish in 7 hours time, I just hit that twice to add 2 hours. Finish in 12 hours time, hit that seven times, so that'll come up with 12. And it just does a countdown. There's no clock involved in there, it's just the time in hours, and it just will tick backwards, if you can follow what I'm saying there. So yeah, that's it. The beep when it's finished is quite quiet, so I sometimes set the oven timer on at the same time to finish, so I can hear when it's ready to go. Okay, well, if I remember, I'll come back and show you the mixing process in about an hour's time. Right, countdown to the mixer starting. Just while we're waiting, I should show you the nut dispenser on top. That's where hard things like nuts go in there, and then it just opens automatically when it's ready to drop them in. And I just thought, if you want to make a vegan recipe, that's without any of the milk and stuff like that, you can, the French bread one is very nice. It takes about 6 hours, but it makes really nice bread. And it's basically just yeast, water, salt, butter, well, substitute oil for the butter and water. But it's quite a fragile loaf, but tastes very nice. So with having out that one, and we're away. So it's now just started mixing. As you can see, it will just pulse like that for 10 minutes or so, and just what you're looking for at the end of this is a ball of dough, and I'll show you again when it gets to that point. So you've got some idea if you've got the ingredients mixed correctly. So it'll just pulse around like that for a wee while, just mixing the water in with the flour, yeast, treacle and whatever else has been added in. I wouldn't normally open it because it is warming up in there, so to get to the ambient temperature for the yeast to work properly. So I usually leave the lid closed, and certainly after about a couple of hours, definitely leave the lid closed, otherwise you probably affect the amount that the bread rises because the temperature's not right. Okay, it's now stopped and it's just resting at the moment, and it will just carry on mixing once it's settled a bit more. But I just wanted to say, there we go, now it's going quite fast. It does say in the book about have it on a steady surface and not too near the edge and so on and so forth, but it's pretty rock steady, so even though it is moving around, it's I would suggest it's not going to go anywhere. So you can see now that the dough is pretty well mixed, and that's probably the consistency you're looking for if you've got the quantities correctly, and that should go on to make quite a reasonable loaf. Right, that's about it. I'll close it up and leave it to do its thing. So I've changed the angle of the camera so you should be able to see now. There's the menu button, size button, and the crust colour button. As I say, all I use usually is just the menu to select the brown loaf size. I'm doing a medium size according to the quantities in the recipe book, and then just the start button, and just leave it then for the requisite number of hours to come up with the loaf. Right, the bread's just about there, so I've got the gloves, and there we go. So press the end, press the stop button. Right, I've also got the oven timer on as well because it's louder. Switch that off. So just give it a twist, lift, and then I've got a wire rack here, and just put it out on the wire rack. Slight shake, pull it out, it upright and just leave it to cool. Now the container, as you may see, probably not, it's got the hook still on the bottom there. There's a little bit of bread caught round it, so I need to clean that off. But it just really needs wiping out with a clean cloth. And that will be ready to go again. If you do make the XL, the large, which tends to come about that high, it does make it difficult to cut. So it's best to leave it to cool, otherwise the bread knife just gets clogged with the wet bread. And then you can buy one of these devices, slicer. You get on eBay for about, I don't know, $2, $5, I mean very little money. And you're going to use one of those, just, well, it's still wet till it cools, but you can use it just as a guide. For a knife somewhere, and then you just follow it down. Still needs a bit of care, but I say with the larger loaves it tends to be more accurate than trying to cut purely by hand. Anyway, here we go. Happy baking!